In On the Edge tonight, Backchat looks at cricket and the Sydney Olympics, controversy surrounding the new coach for Bafana Bafana, and Sudden Death discusses professional athletes. Backchat. Now, forgive us if we're wrong, but isn't it an ugly sight to see the captain of an international side doing what we were punished for as children? Chewing with your mouth open. Ach, sis man. For heaven's sake, can someone please inform Mr. Taylor, and for that matter all sportsmen, that it is a disgusting habit? Can you imagine the following prominent people chewing with their mouths wide open while the television cameras are focused on them? Nelson Mandela whilst addressing Parliament, Rian Kruiwagen reading the news, Ali Bacher telling us about the latest development in cricket, or Penny Haynes when she receives her gold medal at the Olympics. In the wonderful way that sports sponsorships work, it will not surprise us if that famous little chipmunk bubblegum company sponsors Chewy Taylor in future. In recent times, Australian wizard spinner Shane Warne has been criticised for his overweight problem. The best banner regarding this issue was, "It ain't over till the fat boy spins." Well, the fat boy spinned the South African batsman into a fizz at the Sydney Cricket Ground earlier this week. Like him or not, give Tubby Warne credit for his performance. He even spinned Daryl Cullinan out of the South African side. But Mr. Warne, be warned, the South African crowd and banner creators are waiting for you in the future. The South African batting performance, or lack thereof, makes one wonder where the aggressiveness they had on their tour to Pakistan had gone. A more subdued batting performance has yet to be found in their recent cricket history. It looked like they were playing for a draw at the tossing of the coin. Is it not time the selectors looked at the more hungry youngsters playing for the South African A side, who absolutely overpowered their West Indies counterparts? Perhaps the time has come that they be honest with themselves and select on merit, not on sentiment. Would Nick Potters not be a better bet as a wicket-keeper? And young redhead Hayward from the Eastern Province could also be included. On the Edge would like to see a match between the current South African A side and Hansie's Troopers. It is reported that the Australian government is looking for 500 million Aussie dollars to host the 2000 Olympics. Is this not a little late for underestimated budgets? Could this be one of the bigger oops in the Olympic history? Perhaps they should ask the rich and famous, who clutters the International Olympic Committee, to reach into their own bulging pockets to help. Or perhaps ask Mr. Mark Taylor to donate some of his money that may be available when the chipmunk sponsors his bubblegum. Congratulations to Philippe Trozier on his selection as the SA soccer coach. One thing, what happens when the interim coach, Joe Mosono, is successful with the team in Burkina Faso in the next Africa Cup of Nations? Will poor Philippe be out of a job? Dear Mr. Mandela, in 1995, you were the lucky charm for the South African rugby team. In 1996, you helped us win the African Cup of Nations. You are such a great inspiration for sport in this country. Can we please ask you for a few more favours in 1998? Can you please help the South African soccer team in the 1998 World Cup? Is it possible for you to help Mr. Tswete and Dr. Late to solve the rugby issues? Can you give a little more attention to the cricket team so that they perform more consistently? Will you solve the boxing crisis for us? Can you take time off during the Commonwealth Games so that we get a few medals? With so many allegations of corruption in sport, can you please appoint commissions of inquiries to all sport so that we can get this rotten apple out of our sporting basket once and for all? We are sure that you'll receive enough uniforms from the sporting disciplines to be suitably dressed for each and every occasion. We know that you can't be everywhere all the time, but as you are the only one with a successful sport track record and such a great inspiration to our athletes, we hope that you'll help South African sport to get where it belongs. On top. Regards, On the Edge.
They played in the last Under-19 Cricket World Cup. They were the promising youngsters. The raw talent. They were the stars of the future. Once again, promising youngsters with raw talent are destined to become the stars of the future. The MTN Under-19 Cricket World Cup. Don't miss it.
South African sport is facing one of its busiest years in its short history since readmission. Let's look at a few of these. Apart from the South Africans playing in Australia, they're also facing Pakistan, who will tour South Africa from the end of January till middle March. Sri Lanka takes over the touring duties from March till April, when Pakistan leave for Zimbabwe. In April, Pakistan, South Africa and Sri Lanka will meet in a triangular series. With the Asian batsmen moving up the Coopers and Librand ratings, the latter should be a run's feast, and we hope that the selectors will use the next 2 months to prepare the young up-and-coming players who are waiting in the wings to replace the older stalwarts. Rugby. At the end of January, the Super 12 starts, and with the new regional teams from South Africa taking part, we will see competition on a much more even base compared to last year. Following the Super 12, Wales and Ireland are touring in South Africa, and the Tri-Nation Series takes place. Will the newfound confidence of Mallet's Masters continue? The expansive game that South Africa is playing at the moment should make the world take notice once again. At the end of the South African domestic season, South Africa is once again touring Europe and will play all 4 home unions. South Africa will also host a Southern Hemisphere Under-21 tournament where our youngsters will show their stuff. We hope that the high on which South African rugby ended in 1997 will continue in this 11-month period, the longest in South African history. On the Edge is asking, how long can players continue these physical demands made by the public, television contracts and Mammon, the money god? We also hope that the epic investigations will finally be concluded in such a manner that the sport can continue on its successful way. Again, the South African domestic season is a short and demanding one. With great sponsors like ABSA and Engine carrying the local can, the future of South African athletics looks bright, and it appears as if all major differences have now been settled. After the success of the athletes in 1997, they can look forward to the Commonwealth Games with confidence. It is also time for the promising youngsters to flourish, as the scene is set for SA's athletics' greatest year. ASA came to the party. Shouldn't you? With golf becoming more and more expensive to fulfill the demands of television, the media, the public and the players, it is sad to see that the once lucrative South African domestic tour has been scaled down to only a few events. But on the brighter side, the European tour is visiting us for a fleeting moment. The question asked about golf in South Africa is, apart from Ernie, David, Retief, Wayne and our adopted favourite golfer Nick Price, who are pulling the crowds? Won't you rather sit at home and watch the world's best at midnight on satellite? On the Edge supports golf in this country, but is it really of such high quality that it is worth watching instead of the Super 12? Golf needs a boost, and we hope that they get it this new year. With South Africa's world champions well established in the different divisions, the future of the country's second most popular sport looks promising. Apart from the inside fighting in boxing circles, the boxers themselves should do us proud as they'll attempt to conquer more and more titles. The possibility of a commission of inquiry to investigate allegations of corruption is not excluded in the forthcoming year. We hope that South Africa will produce more rising stars and more up-and-coming promoters in 1998. With the dismal performance of the South African team in 1997, we can only hope that it gets better in the next 12 months. The African Cup of Nations champions are defending their title in Burkina Faso and then move on to the World Cup in France. Why do we get the feeling that the South African soccer lovers are less confident now than they were 5 months ago? You cannot really blame them if you have a coach that will only be available to the team 2 months before this great event. Nevertheless, this is the most important year in South African soccer history, and we hope that the public and the media will support our team to its fullest.
What do we have to do about Filtrosa? We have to give him a chance.
Yes.
After Jomo. We don't have even to condemn him before he can do a job.
I think Jomo Sono is the best man for us. We need that. I mean, like Jomo Sono, because he can do a lot for us.
There was any problem with Clive Barker. I mean, Clive Barker was just doing the talking, and then the players, those were the people who are doing the job in the field. I don't think there was any problem with Clive Barker.
Because what happened in Saudi Arabia, it was not Clive Barker's mistake. I mean, if the players can't score goals, it's not the coach's job. It's not the coach's fault for them not scoring goals. What they should have done is just to work with him to correct the situation.
But I prefer Jomo Sono because he knows the guys. He knows every story of the guys in the country.
Well, I think he's a brilliant coach, and I think he can do it for South Africa.
Our chance in the World Cup is zero. That's my true opinion. Because soccer, South Africa doesn't. There's no future for soccer in South Africa.
I think we stand a good chance.
Personally, I hope that we make it to the semi-finals.
Yeah, well, our chances are not that much, very much slim, but I think we can perform at least up to the semi-finals.
I want us to give him a chance because with Jomo Sono, we know him. He's got a good record in as far as producing young stars is concerned. But we are not saying Jomo Sono should put more youngsters. We are just saying he must put in 1 or 2 to 3 youngsters so that they could at least build themselves up towards going to France, you see.
I see no problem in that. Barker has done his job, he's done a very good job. Okay, let the new broom come in and let's see how it's going to do. Because at the end, those guys were relaxed because they knew that every man has his own positions. But because there's a new coach and a new broom, maybe we'll see some better changes in the squad.
With the recent appointment of the new soccer coach to Bafana Bafana, Philippe Trouzier, and temporary coach Jomo Sono, On the Edge thought it was a good idea to have a discussion about the new appointments tonight. Arrangements were made with prominent and credible soccer officials to interview them and discuss the matter. Unfortunately, an executive of SAFA had informed them that SAFA had asked all official registered members of the PSL and NSL to please refrain from making their views public. One leading soccer coach remarked that although they were politely told, there was heavy inference that if they should go ahead with discussions with On the Edge, their jobs may be in balance. He described it as subtle political blackmail. Were SAFA disturbed at the spate of mass media negative coverage and officials openly criticizing them? On the Edge decided to do our own investigation on the appointments and the sequence of events that led to it. Returning from the Federation Cup where Bafana Bafana had a dismal tournament, Clive Barker announced his retirement in an artificial jovial mood. Question: was Barker pushed or did he fall by his own hand? A well-known soccer journalist and TV commentator remarked that the appointment of a foreigner was a panic move after the national team's bad record the past few months. Ironically, Danny Jordan, CEO of SAFA, stated that 1997 was the best year ever in SA soccer. Question: is SAFA under the impression that the national squad is better than their world ranking or performance indicates? The friendlies against England, Brazil, France and Germany were the grave that SAFA put Clive Barker in. If our minds serve us correctly, On the Edge did criticise SAFA because more emphasis was put on the Rothmans Cup games than the internationals. Now the Barker man was put to blame for a Bafana Bafana team that did not perform to expectations. Let us meet the main players in this coaching saga. Jomo Sono, SA soccer legend and appointed as coach till the Africa Cup of Nations, after which he'll be the technical advisor, whatever that means. He is seemingly unwilling to take Bafana Bafana to the World Cup. Why could SAFA not appoint him as coach till the World Cup? Philippe Trouzier, currently the coach of Burkina Faso. Investigating his background and appointment, we discovered the following. He spent 10 years of his coaching career in North, West and South Africa. He is reputed to be strict and a no-nonsense coach, ruthless and uncompromising. It'll be interesting to see the cooperation between Sono and this man. Apart from coaching Burkina Faso, he also coached in Abidjan, where he was fired as coach of the national side in 1993. Taken in by Kaizer Chiefs in 1994, he lasted 4 months before being fired. The office bearers were concerned for his life when loyal Chiefs fans objected vigorously to his appointment. In 1997, he was appointed coach to Nigeria, steering them to World Cup qualification, the same as Clive Barker for South Africa. He was fired by the Nigerian hierarchy for lack of technical knowledge. In the same year that Burkina Faso appointed him, they were prepared to release him to South Africa after the expiry of his contract. The worrying factors around his appointment are: how will the players understand his heavy accented English? It is interesting to note that although his previous appointments were in French-speaking countries, they all fired him or released him from his contract. Were there negotiations taking place with him while Clive Barker was still the appointed coach? Who was the agent or persons involved in this deal? Were they South Africans? What can a foreigner change at our national side in 2 months prior to the most important tournament in their history? And why would SAFA request their officials to refrain from commenting on his appointments? Criticizing SAFA's top brass, a top coach who wished to remain anonymous fearing reprisals made the following unconfirmed statement. SAFA does not have an inkling about who the qualified coaches in the country are. He challenged to name them now, without time to cover their tracks. It has been more than 10 years since a coaching conference has been held. Some of the nationally appointed coaches do not have coaching licenses. They did not take any exams and did not qualify. Jomo Sono is, again unconfirmed, such a coach. In 1997, coaches and experts on coaching from Holland and Germany visited South Africa. Their styles and philosophies would have been adopted. They even appointed Hans Klieter as director of coaching. Nothing happened. SAFA has little regard for FIFA rules and regulations. When Johannesson becomes the FIFA boss at the end of 1998, SAFA can expect no special treatment from him, as he was not impressed by the administration of SA Soccer. Thousands of rands have been spent on the Picard Commission, but very little have been done, only some window dressing. With all this criticism towards SAFA, would they be willing to open their books regarding allegations of irregularities? On the Edge will again address this matter the moment SAFA lifts the subtle ban on their officials speaking out in public. Sudden death.
For any young, talented sportsman in South Africa today who wishes to be professional, I say to him, gather the rosebuds while ye may. Carpe diem, take the day. Enjoy your sport while you can before you take that monumental decision. And you must remember that being a professional in South Africa is in no way compared to that of a Britain, Europe, America, or South America. They have been professionals for many years. You are in the nursery stage. We are all dazzled by the vast amounts of money that these overseas sportsmen earn, mainly from TV, advertising and endorsements. Michael Jordan, we read, earns well over $35 million. Evander Holyfield will fight for no less than $40 million. And the amount of multi-millionaires in soccer and the rugby world are virtually endless. Not yet in South Africa. Our television, our sponsors, and our advertisers are not yet geared to these levels of money. There are other aspects to consider when you are now playing for money for a living. This is now a job, a 24-hour business. There are many times where you will be away from home. The emotional, the personal, the domestic side of upheavals of your life will now become involved and take stress. Consider our cricketers now playing overseas. They will have 16 test matches to play in 11 months, one-day internationals, a surfeit of cricket, a belly full of cricket, and we must expect a certain amount of burnout. Players cannot perform at their top level every time. This we cannot accept. And do not be surprised when we see a falling star. What about our rugby players? They have a full season. What with the Tri-Nations, the Super 12, the Currie Cup, interprovincial matches and club matches, our rugby players will be playing rugby virtually every week, every day. And then again, there's the danger of injury. In boxing, we have 7 world champions who fought 35 times last year for world titles. The majority of these were fought in foreign lands. I again see our fighters going overseas to earn their money, and an opportunity for foreign promoters to come into our land and produce those brilliant extravaganzas that they have in their own countries. This country will be open for the Don Kings and the Bob Arams of America. What then is the answer to these increased pressures now placed on our sportsmen, sometimes unfairly? A word of advice. Before you decide to make sport your livelihood, make sure that you have another avenue of life. A hobby, a diploma, a degree, a business, some form of investment. Statistics show that over 95% of sportsmen who did not make provision for life after sport found themselves in dire straits. Remember that there is life after sport.
Mawe, mawe, mawe,